The Zanthari were a race known across the galaxy as Supreme Conquerors, a species that thrived on challenges and whose advanced technology had brought countless worlds under their control. Their sleek, silvery ships were symbols of their dominance, moving through the cosmos like predators through dark waters. They were renowned for their strategic brilliance, their ability to adapt to hostile environments, and their relentless pursuit of expansion. For centuries, they had subdued planets teeming with dangers that would have broken lesser beings. Yet their endless thirst for resources had left their home star system exhausted, the planets stripped bare, and their energy reserves dwindling. Faced with the need to secure new resources, the Zanthari High Council turned their gaze toward Earth, a small, unassuming blue world at the fringes of known space. Their databases classified it as a Deathworld, a term reserved for planets where survival was deemed nearly impossible due to extreme environmental conditions, predatory species, and erratic weather. To the Zanthari, this was merely a label, another challenge to be conquered. Commander Zelnor, a seasoned leader with a reputation for fearlessness, was appointed to lead the scouting mission to Earth. He viewed it as just another assignment, a step toward further glory. Zelnor prepared the mission with meticulous care, but with an underlying arrogance that came from years of success. The initial reports from their probes showed a planet with a hostile environment, massive storms, earthquakes, predatory animals, and dense, untamed wilderness. These were factors the Zanthari had faced many times before. They had encountered planets with acidic atmospheres, molten landscapes, and species far deadlier than anything Earth seemed to offer. Zelnor was confident. A death world in name only, he scoffed, reviewing the data. We have conquered worlds far more dangerous than this. The scouting expedition launched with a fleet of reconnaissance drones and a small team of elite soldiers. As their craft entered Earth's atmosphere, the Zanthari maintained a steady communication stream, observing the planet from above. Their sensors scanned the surface, gathering data on everything from tectonic activity to biological life forms. They found the weather unpredictable but hardly concerning, the wildlife varied but manageable. Zelnor felt assured. Earth is just another primitive rock, he declared to his team. Its dangers are overstated. Upon landing in a remote area, they quickly deployed their advanced reconnaissance drones, small machines designed to survey and map unfamiliar terrain. They established a temporary base, using their cloaking technology to remain hidden from the native species. As they began their initial observations, the landscape seemed deceptively tranquil. They noted the lush green forests, the vast oceans teeming with life, and the high mountain ranges capped with snow. To the Zanthari, these were nothing more than obstacles to be navigated, not threats to be feared. Their disdain for Earth was evident in every word and gesture. They scanned for signs of human civilization, detecting small clusters of settlements. The humans, to their eyes, appeared primitive and technologically backward, using crude tools and machines that seemed laughably ineffective. Zelnor dismissed them outright. They are no different from any other simple creatures we've encountered, he said with a smirk. Insignificant, easily subdued if necessary. However, as they pushed deeper into the environment, the first hints of trouble began to emerge. The weather, initially stable, shifted rapidly. Unforeseen storms gathered with alarming speed, bringing torrential rains and fierce winds that battered their equipment and disoriented their drones. The vegetation, which at first seemed lush and beautiful, proved dense and impenetrable, interfering with their sensors and communication arrays. As they moved through thick jungles and across rugged terrain, they found that the flora was not just overgrown but actively resistant, vines that wrapped around their machines, plants that released spores and toxins unknown to their science. Zelnor ordered adjustments, convinced that their technology could overcome these minor annoyances. But the difficulties persisted. Their drones began malfunctioning inexplicably, losing contact or crashing into the dense forest canopy. Sensors picked up strange readings, anomalies that did not fit any known patterns. And then there were the animals, predators that seemed to hunt in coordinated packs, with a cunning that defied their expectations. A few drones were destroyed, not by random chance, but by deliberate attacks from what seemed like coordinated predators. The Zanthari began to notice patterns, movements in the environment that seemed too organized, too intentional. Zelnor's confidence began to waver slightly, but he masked it with irritation. "It's a death world for its own species, perhaps," he muttered, "but we are not so easily deterred." Yet, as they continued their reconnaissance, it became clear that something more was at play. Strange electromagnetic pulses interfered with their systems, causing their equipment to glitch and their communications to crackle with static. The very air seemed to buzz with an unseen energy. The initial signs of disdain turned to caution as the Zanthari began to sense that they were not alone in this environment, that Earth was not a place to be easily understood or conquered. The first signs of true danger crept in slowly, almost imperceptibly. It was as if the planet itself was aware of their presence, reacting to their every move. Commander Zelnor stood at the edge of their camp, his eyes scanning the dense foliage around them. For the first time, he felt a twinge of uncertainty. The patterns were there, unmistakable. Something was watching them, something intelligent and dangerous. He could feel it, lurking just beyond the limits of their sight. He turned back to his team, his voice steady but his mind now racing with a realization he hadn't anticipated. "Stay alert," he ordered. "There is more to this world than we expected." The initial days on Earth had seemed manageable, but that illusion quickly shattered as the environment's hostility began to reveal itself. A sudden storm, unlike anything the Zanthari had encountered, descended upon them with little warning. Thunder rumbled across the sky, and fierce winds battered their camp, tearing apart equipment and sending debris flying through the air. The rain was relentless, pouring in sheets so dense that visibility dropped to almost nothing. The ground, once firm beneath their feet, turned into a quagmire, making movement difficult and slow. Their technology, designed to withstand the elements of countless worlds, began to falter. Unexpected electromagnetic interference scrambled their sensors, turning displays into static and disrupting communications. Drones fell from the sky, their circuits fried by invisible pulses, and their reconnaissance data became corrupted, adding to their confusion. The terrain itself seemed to conspire against them. Rocky outcroppings crumbled underfoot, and pathways became impassable as mudslides swept through the area. The ground shook with unexpected tremors, each quake stronger than the last, making even their most basic movements a struggle. The Zanthari quickly moved to adapt, deploying shields to protect their equipment and recalibrating their sensors to filter out the interference. Yet, every time they adjusted, the environment seemed to respond with new challenges. They observed animals using strange behaviors that suggested intelligence, predators coordinating their attacks, herds moving in unexpected formations, and smaller creatures setting traps that could immobilize even their advanced drones. Plants, too, seemed to resist them. Vines ensnared their machinery, and flowers released spores that corroded their metal surfaces. It was as if the very world itself was alive, aware, and intent on their failure. Determined to establish control, a Zanthari scouting party ventured deeper into the forest, hoping to gather more data. It was there they encountered humans for the first time. The aliens, armed with their energy weapons and wearing advanced armor, expected an easy confrontation. They viewed the humans as primitive beings, barely worth considering. But they quickly discovered how wrong they were. The humans appeared suddenly, using the dense foliage as cover. They moved swiftly, almost blending into the environment. The Zanthari raised their weapons, but before they could fire, the humans dispersed, moving like shadows through the trees. The Zanthari fired blindly, hitting nothing but leaves and branches. The humans reappeared, using slings and other simple tools to launch stones and debris, hitting weak points in the aliens' armor. They used the terrain masterfully, creating confusion with their rapid movements and unexpected tactics. The Zanthari, bewildered by the humans' agility and unpredictability, attempted to regroup. They expected the humans to engage in direct combat, but instead, they were met with deception. The humans used mirrors to reflect sunlight, blinding the alien scouts momentarily. They employed makeshift traps, digging pits covered with foliage, and guiding the aliens into them. Each step forward seemed to be met with another unexpected challenge. The realization began to sink in. These humans were not just surviving on this death world, they had mastered it. The Zanthari, for all their technological prowess, were outmaneuvered at every turn. They retreated to the safety of their base, shaken and disoriented. Back at camp, they began to analyze the data from the encounter, trying to make sense of what had happened. It became clear that the humans were not just physically adapted to their environment, they were strategically adept, using knowledge of the terrain and their natural surroundings to their advantage in ways the Zanthari could not have predicted. Zelnor reviewed the reports, frustration growing with every line. Their weapons, which had functioned flawlessly on countless worlds, were malfunctioning. The electromagnetic interference was affecting their targeting systems, causing them to miss even stationary targets. Communication channels crackled with static, making coordinated movements nearly impossible. The humans seemed to know exactly where to strike and when to disappear, leaving the Zanthari grasping at shadows. Their confidence, once unshakable, began to crumble. Every attempt to press forward was met with new obstacles. More scouting parties went missing, their last transmissions cut off abruptly. Equipment continued to fail, and drones disappeared without a trace. The dense forests and rugged terrain became more than just a physical barrier. They were psychological traps, making every step a gamble. The aliens began to sense that they were being watched, tracked, and studied, just as they had intended to do with the humans. As the days went on, fear crept into the ranks. The whispers began, rumors that the planet itself was hostile, that it was somehow fighting back. Some of the Zanthari started to question the wisdom of their mission, doubting their ability to succeed where so many others had failed. Zelnor tried to maintain control, but even he could not deny the evidence before him. Earth was not a death world merely because of its harsh conditions. It was a death world because of the people who lived there, humans who had turned surviving against all odds into an art form. Every new decision seemed fraught with danger. The more they advanced, the more they lost: drones, equipment, soldiers. The planet was relentless, and so were its inhabitants. The Zanthari's superior technology, their greatest advantage, seemed increasingly useless. Earth was proving to be more than a challenge. It was a nightmare, a place where every rule of engagement had been turned upside down. The Zanthari found themselves entangled in an ever-tightening web of defeat. Each day brought new setbacks that chipped away at their confidence and strength. Their attempts to establish a reliable communication network across Earth's terrain were met with unexpected and relentless interference. Signals they thought secure were scrambled or jammed by unknown sources. Humans seemed to have an uncanny ability to locate and disrupt their equipment, leaving the Zanthari blind and vulnerable. Drones sent out to scout and repair the damaged networks were either destroyed by unseen assailants or malfunctioned inexplicably, their circuits fried by Earth's unpredictable magnetic fields. Frustration mounted as the Zanthari struggled to make sense of their rapidly deteriorating situation. Every step they took, every strategy they employed, seemed to have been anticipated by the humans or thwarted by the environment itself. Dense fogs rolled in out of nowhere, concealing their movements. Swarms of insects interfered with their sensors, and even the local wildlife seemed to attack with a bizarre level of coordination. Predators that should have fled at their approach instead attacked with a ferocity and cunning that defied expectations. It was as if the planet itself was conspiring against them. In a bid to regain control, the Zanthari adapted their tactics, deploying more sophisticated technology. They increased the power of their signal transmitters, armed their drones with enhanced weaponry, and established fortified positions with automated defenses. But the humans countered every move with a creativity that left the aliens baffled. Guerrilla tactics disrupted their fortified areas. Traps and ambushes rendered their technological superiority ineffective. Humans used everything at their disposal, the terrain, the weather, even the native animals, as tools of warfare. It became clear that the humans were not fighting by any rules the Zanthari understood. Where the aliens relied on structured strategies and technological prowess, the humans were unpredictable, using stealth, deception, and a deep understanding of their environment. They seemed to appear and vanish at will, leaving confusion and chaos in their wake. Commander Zelnor began to see that what they had considered their greatest strength, their technology, was turning into a liability. Their sophisticated systems were delicate and vulnerable to the very environment they had thought would be easily conquered. The more advanced their equipment, the more it seemed to fail. Their armored suits overheated in the humid jungles. Their vehicles became stuck in the muddy terrain. High-frequency communication devices were scrambled by simple atmospheric conditions that their systems couldn't calibrate for fast enough. And always, the humans were there, exploiting every weakness, every failure, using their own world as an ally. Tensions within the Zanthari ranks grew unbearable. The initial confidence and bravado that had marked their arrival had given way to fear and doubt. The soldiers began to whisper among themselves, questioning the wisdom of their mission, doubting their leaders. Some demanded answers, while others suggested retreating before more lives were lost. Commander Zanthar faced dissent from his officers, who began to openly question his decisions. They had come expecting a swift conquest, not a prolonged struggle for survival. Zanthar, normally calm and composed, felt the weight of his authority pressing down like never before. The losses were mounting. Scouting parties disappeared without a trace. Equipment was destroyed or rendered useless. Reports from the field were filled with tales of humans appearing as if from nowhere, striking quickly, and then melting back into the shadows. The psychological toll was evident. His soldiers were afraid, not just of the environment, but of the humans themselves. They had come to fear an enemy they could not predict or understand. The commander's confidence began to crack. He understood the precariousness of their situation, but his pride and fear of disgrace drove him to maintain control. He knew that to retreat now would mean admitting defeat to his superiors back home, and he could not bear the thought of returning empty-handed. He called a council of his remaining officers and listened to their arguments, some urging a retreat, others suggesting a final, all-out push to achieve some semblance of victory. Zanthar wrestled with the decision. To withdraw would mean the end of his career, possibly worse. To press on was risky, but the alternative seemed unthinkable. Driven by a need to prove himself and save face, he chose to push forward. They would make one last effort, a concentrated strike to break through the human defenses and regain their footing. He masked his uncertainty with a show of determination, rallying his troops with promises of triumph and glory. But even as he spoke, doubts gnawed at him. The humans had proven themselves far more capable than he had imagined. They had adapted, survived, and fought back with a cunning and tenacity that defied all logic. As he outlined the plan for a final push, he remained unaware that the humans had already set their own trap, watching his every move, waiting for him to make the fatal mistake. The Zanthari readied themselves for what they hoped would be a decisive move, but the cracks in their resolve were widening. Soldiers moved with a sense of urgency tinged with fear, glancing over their shoulders, sensing the unseen eyes upon them. The once proud invaders now looked like prey, trapped in a world that seemed determined to defeat them. They steeled themselves for the coming battle, unaware that the humans were not just waiting but anticipating every move they were about to make. The humans had watched and waited, learning from every skirmish, studying the Zanthari's movements and tactics. They knew their technology inside out, understood the patterns in their attacks, and recognized their reliance on predictable strategies. With this knowledge, they set a trap to draw the alien forces into a narrow valley, a place chosen specifically for its harsh, unforgiving terrain. Jagged cliffs loomed on either side, and the ground was uneven and treacherous. It was a natural choke point, a place where the aliens' technological superiority would count for little against the elements and the cunning of the humans. The Zanthari, unaware of the danger, advanced into the valley, believing they were chasing a retreating human force. Commander Zanthar, driven by his desire for a decisive victory, pushed his troops forward, eager to crush what he thought was a weakened enemy. The narrow path limited their movement, forcing them to abandon their usual formations. The alien soldiers moved cautiously, their eyes scanning the rocky outcrops for any sign of ambush, but saw nothing. The terrain was difficult, their equipment weighed them down, and already, some of their advanced machinery was showing signs of strain. Then, without warning, the valley erupted with activity. Hidden charges, set by the humans, detonated with a deafening roar, triggering rockslides that crashed down from the cliffs, smashing into the alien ranks. Boulders tumbled, crushing equipment, and cutting off routes of escape. Dust filled the air, blinding the Zanthari and plunging them into chaos. The humans launched their counteroffensive with precision, moving swiftly through the terrain they knew so well. Using guerrilla tactics, they struck from the shadows, disabling the aliens' weapons and communications with targeted strikes. The Zanthari tried to regroup, but their technology, designed for open battlefields and direct confrontations, began to falter in the face of the unpredictable environment. Their cloaking devices flickered and failed under the electromagnetic anomalies, their energy shields overloaded by the constant debris, and their automated defenses malfunctioned, firing blindly into the rocks. Every attempt to coordinate was disrupted by the humans' well-timed assaults. They cut power lines, jammed signals, and set traps that targeted the weak points in the aliens' armor. Desperation set in as the Zanthari realized they had been lured into a trap. Their attempts to advance were met with fierce resistance. Every step forward became a battle against both the terrain and the human fighters who seemed to know exactly where to strike. The humans were relentless, using hit-and-run tactics, always staying one step ahead. They triggered avalanches, rolled boulders down from above, and unleashed torrents of water from hidden reservoirs that swept through the valley floor, knocking alien soldiers off their feet and short-circuiting their gear. Zelnor watched in disbelief as his forces began to crumble. The humans fought with an intensity and a strategy that he had not expected. They were not just reacting, they were anticipating, predicting his every move. Panic spread through the Zanthari ranks. Soldiers shouted over the failing communication channels, orders were lost in the chaos, and their formations broke apart. The terrain, once thought to be a mere obstacle, had become a deadly weapon wielded with skill and precision by their human adversaries. The realization came hard and fast. They were hopelessly outmatched. Their numbers dwindled as more and more were lost to the relentless assaults and environmental hazards. The morale that had already been fragile began to shatter. Alien soldiers, once proud and disciplined, started to retreat in confusion, abandoning their positions, driven back by a combination of fear and frustration. The humans pressed their advantage, capitalizing on every moment of hesitation, every sign of weakness. Zelnor could see the end approaching. He had underestimated this world, its people, and their determination to defend it. Earth was not just a death world, it was a battleground forged by its inhabitants' will to survive and conquer adversity. The humans had turned their environment into an extension of themselves, using its every element against the invaders who dared to set foot on their soil. With his forces in disarray, Zelnor gave the order to retreat, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of battle. What had begun as a mission of conquest was now a desperate scramble for survival. The few remaining Zanthari scrambled to reach their ships, leaving behind their dead, their equipment, and their shattered pride. They fought their way back through the valley, pursued by human fighters who gave no quarter, until they finally reached the landing zone, battered and broken. The survivors managed to flee back to their ship, lifting off just in time to avoid being completely overwhelmed. As they escaped orbit, the realization of their failure set in. Their understanding of danger had been fundamentally flawed. They had come expecting to face a primitive species, only to find themselves undone by a force that thrived on adversity. Earth was not a world to be conquered, not by force, and certainly not by arrogance. The surviving Zanthari limped back to their home system, their ships scarred and their spirits broken. What was meant to be a triumphant mission had turned into a humiliating failure. The once proud conquerors returned in disgrace, their losses heavy, their equipment damaged, and their confidence shattered. As they docked at the orbital station, there was no fanfare, no welcoming celebration, only the cold silence of shame and the weight of their defeat hanging in the air. Commander Zelnor was summoned immediately before the High Council. The council chamber, a vast, imposing room filled with the most powerful leaders of the Zanthari, was heavy with tension. Zelnor stood before them, his head bowed, his mind racing. He knew the stakes. A failed mission of this magnitude would not be forgiven lightly. The loss of status and power loomed over him like a shadow, threatening to strip away everything he had built over a lifetime. The leader of the council, an elder with piercing eyes, demanded an explanation. Zelnor began to recount the events, his voice steady but tinged with a bitterness that came from deep within. He described Earth, not as a primitive world ripe for conquest, but as a place where every aspect of existence was shaped by danger. He spoke of the humans, their resourcefulness, their adaptability, and their mastery over their environment. Earth is not a place that can be conquered by conventional means, he stated, his voice firm. The humans are not mere inhabitants, they are its guardians, honed by its challenges. The council listened, some with disbelief, others with growing concern. The idea that an invasion force of their strength could be outsmarted and outmaneuvered by what they had dismissed as a lesser species was difficult to accept. Murmurs filled the room as they weighed the implications of Zelnor's report. A debate broke out among the leaders, with some advocating for another invasion, this time with greater numbers and more powerful weaponry. They argued that a stronger show of force could crush the humans and take the resources they desperately needed. But others were more cautious. They warned against provoking a species that had clearly shown an uncanny ability to turn adversity into strength. They pointed out that the humans had not just survived the invasion but had thrived under its pressure, turning every advantage the Zanthari had into a vulnerability. We underestimated them once, one elder cautioned. To do so again could be our undoing. As the debate raged, it became clear that perceptions of humans were shifting. No longer seen as primitive or inconsequential, the humans were now regarded as a formidable force, capable of using every element of their world to their advantage. The Zanthari leaders began to recognize that their failure was not just a matter of strategy but of understanding. They had approached Earth as they had every other world, with arrogance and a belief in their superiority. And they had paid the price. After hours of deliberation, the council decided on a course of action. They would not risk another direct confrontation, not without better preparation and a deeper understanding of what they were truly facing. Instead, they chose to issue a warning, not just to their own people, but to the galaxy at large. The Zanthari broadcast a message to every known star system, a transmission that echoed through the cosmos. It was a warning about Earth, a death world unlike any other. They described the planet's dangers, the resilience and ingenuity of its people, and the folly of underestimating them. Approach with caution, the message concluded, or risk facing the same fate as those who came before. The transmission was intercepted by the humans, who wasted no time in crafting a response. Their reply was laced with humor, a subtle mockery that carried an underlying message of confidence. To those who wish to visit, the message read, we welcome you. But be warned, Earth is a place where only the strong thrive, and we have learned to be very strong indeed. The Zanthari leaders, upon receiving this response, were left in a state of uneasy contemplation. They had underestimated the humans once, and it had cost them dearly. Now they faced a choice: to acknowledge their defeat and learn from it, or to risk further losses in a battle against an enemy they now knew was far more formidable than they had ever imagined. As they weighed their options, one thing became clear: Earth was no ordinary world, and its people were no ordinary adversaries. The humans had shown that they were a force to be reckoned with, a species that thrived on challenge and had turned a world of constant danger into their greatest strength. The Zanthari had come seeking conquest but had left with a newfound respect, and perhaps, a sense of fear.